The Kansas City Chiefs. So we've got the Kansas City Chiefs. Offensively, the Kansas City Chiefs, we know, are dynamic and a threat every time they step onto the field. Tackle position is their biggest need, as both of their tackles are free agents, Wiley and obviously Orlando Brown. They want to keep Orlando Brown. It makes all the sense in the world to keep Orlando Brown. I don't think he's necessarily a absolute stud, but he is a younger tackle who's about the same age as your quarterback that's going to be there for about 10 years and can protect the blind side of Patrick Mahomes. That is very important. So sign him to whatever you can and whatever works for your team. But Orlando Brown's the biggest priority without a doubt. Now, I'll swear on offense, right? It would be nice to get an upgrade at right tackle, and I think you guys can, because you are the Chiefs, and this is the good thing about being the Chiefs, is I feel like a lot of just, veteran tackles will want to play with Patrick Mahomes. So Morgan Moses, somebody like that, maybe you get Jason Peters for one more year. Or you could go younger at the position as well. But yeah, I would be trying to go for one of these older guys that might be looking to play for a Super Bowl type thing at the right tackle position and securing Orlando Brown at left tackle. Wide receiver, they need a third receiver. Demarcus Robinson and Byron Pringle are both free agents. Neither of them are really a number 3 receiver. They're more like number 4s. Thank you, Natasha, so much, by the way, for the $10. I really appreciate it. She says, appreciate my favorite YouTuber. Thank you so much. Wide receiver position. So number 3, I think Juju makes a lot of sense. I think what they need is a inside receiver that can move the first downs, just convert first downs on third down, get the tough yards, maybe work in the screen game, pitch in as a blocker. That just seems like Juju to me. Juju would make a ton of sense for this team. Maybe you try to take, a swing at Antonio Brown. I think this is a team that might work for. If you could get Allen Robinson on an affordable contract, maybe you look that way. But I wouldn't necessarily be looking at Michael Gallup. I think you've got enough speed. You've got Hill, you've got Hardman. I'd be looking at the inside guys. Juju, Crowder, Emmanuel Sanders, who else? Those type of guys. Even a Rashard Higgins on a 1-year, $3 million contract, I'd be trying to sign that guy. I think that's an upgrade over Demarcus Robinson. Any of those type of players, you could also look to the draft for this as well. Running back, I'd try to keep Jerick McKinnon if I could. I don't think you need to make a huge move there, but trying to re-sign him would be nice on a 1-year deal. Defensively is where you need a lot of work because a lot of people are free agents. Specifically on the defensive line, maybe you try to bring back Melvin Ingram, but if you don't, maybe you go for a little bit more expensive on the D-line, on the edge, because Frank Clark hasn't really worked out. Now, he's still under contract. Not sure what they're going to do there, but Chris Jones is also there. Melvin Ingram's a free agent. Jerron Reed's a free agent. Alex Okafor is a free agent. Derek Nondi's a free agent. All those guys played big roles for you. So both in the inside and on the perimeter, you need pass rushers. So this is a team that I wouldn't be surprised if they targeted, Jadeveon Clowney, the Justin Houstons, the Jerry Hugheses, the JPPs, the older guys that still maybe got a little bit of a spark, or the low-key free agents like the Dante Fowlers, the Tack McKinleys. These are the guys that the Chiefs usually target, and that's the way that I see them going again. I don't think they're going to go for a big name because I don't think they have enough money. Linebacker, I actually think they're in a good place with Bolton and Gay, and just adding depth from there would be nice. Charvarius Ward's probably going to get a better contract elsewhere. He's probably gone. I would want to keep Tyrann Mathieu, though, and I would want to keep Mike Hughes. I think if you went into next year with your 3 corners as Fenton, Hughes, and Snead, you would be fine. And then you could add from the draft. Get rid of Daniel Sorensen, no matter what you do. Go into next year with Tyrann Mathieu and Juan Thornhill and rookie at safety. You could also bring in a veteran safety to be your third safety to replace Daniel Sorensen. And there's lots of candidates for that. Somebody like Daron Harmon, you could grab him. Reliable, won a lot of big games, makes big plays. That type of guy as your third safety would be a huge upgrade over Daniel Sorensen. But really, I think for the Chiefs, third receiver, tackle, D-line with older veterans, retain Tyrann Mathieu, retain Mike Hughes, and that's pretty much it. Now, the areas where I think they can, they're not going to get a lot better. I think where they're going to get better is probably receiver. If you could go into next year with just more depth at playmaker, that would be nice. And I don't think your defense is going to get a lot better. It sucks, but I just don't think they have enough money or draft picks to be able to cover everything. So, yeah, that's how I see the Chiefs. I think as long as you got Mahomes, you got a pretty good foundation on the O-line, you've got some playmakers on defense. Hopefully your linebackers could take a step forward next year. You'll be good next year, there's no doubt. I just don't know if they're going to be better on defense. I do think they're going to be better on offense next year, though. I do have a feeling about that. The Denver Broncos. Now, obviously, this one is really, really difficult. The Denver Broncos is tough because I don't know if they're going to trade for Aaron Rodgers, which obviously is a huge game changer in their offseason plan. Obviously, right? So the Denver Broncos. Let's talk about if you get Aaron Rodgers and if you don't get Aaron Rodgers. So if you get Aaron Rodgers, try to sign Devontae Adams. Period. If you don't get Aaron Rodgers, don't try to sign Devontae Adams. Period. But Aaron Rodgers. Okay, so let's say you got Aaron Rodgers. Offensive line needs to be addressed. So Bobby Massey is a free agent. And you've got Bowles. I like him. Cushenberry improved. The guards are not terrible. I don't think you're terrible on the offensive line. You could be worse. You've got a lot of players on IR that I'm trying to see if you're missing anybody here. Dalton Reisner as well is still on the team. He was hurt. So the offensive line is actually fairly solid. I think right tackle could use an upgrade. That might be a place where you draft somebody. You might want to bring back Bobby Massey, who wasn't bad as a swing tackle, aka also known as a third tackle, maybe your starter with a younger guy trying to take his place. With Aaron Rodgers, I think he can make an offensive line that's average a lot better. But with a weaker quarterback, your offensive line needs to be better, right? The quarterback position, obviously, Rodgers. Tight end, Noah Fant. No question, he's still there. And I actually like the backup. He's okay. Javonte Williams, I'd move on from Melvin Gordon, who is a free agent, so I'd just let him walk. Instead of that, I would look to maybe just draft somebody. I don't think I'd be all over signing a free agent. Maybe if Rodgers is there, you could get a free agent for cheap, like Sony Michel or somebody like J.D. McKissick as a receiving back. You could go that way if you want. I think if Rodgers is there, you could get guys that maybe a lot cheaper. So honestly, offensively, everything's in place for you. Aaron Rodgers or not Aaron Rodgers, you don't have much to add. It's really quarterback, and then right tackle, and then that's really it. You're hoping Jerry Jeudy takes a step forward as a receiver. If he doesn't, you might have to look to receiver next year, but that's not yet, right? Defensively is where you need to do some work, because defensively you could maybe regress, which is not good, because Vic Fangio's gone, and I think he's a big part of their success defensively. So, defensively, we'll get back to quarterback as well. If they don't get Aaron Rodgers, I'll go through alternative routes. So, defensive line on the interior. Shelby Harris is good. Mike Purcell, Dramonte Jones, Draymond Jones. Those guys are solid. You could bring in another interior defensive lineman. Another difference maker would be like Akeem Hicks. That would be maybe if you're trying to go all in. But they're trying to retain the same sort of defensive scheme. So you need the same sort of players. So I think your interior is not bad, but you weren't good versus the run. So maybe looking for one run stuffer wouldn't be a terrible idea. But I do feel like a lot of that was to do with the fact that you played a lot of two safeties deep. So the defense really, I think it was more kind of, if this makes sense, it was more like schematically the reason you were weak against the run than personnel, if that makes sense. I could be wrong there, but that's just my opinion. Now, Bradley Chubb's a stud. Malik Reed is solid. I think you could add to Malik Reed on the edge with a veteran. I don't think they're going to try to go all out for like Chandler Jones. I've seen that, though. And Von Miller. I've seen, a reunion there, which if he wants to, sure. But they could go, the guy from the Rams, what's his name? Ronka. That guy, he's good. He's like a good number 3. I don't know how to say his name. I just call him Oscar. So that guy. And then we got, who else we got? I don't think they're going to be able to get like a Hassan Reddick, but that would be a good fit. Harold Landry, same thing. Good fit, maybe too expensive. Nwosu, Lorenzo Carter, Jacob Martin. It would be nice to have another guy there, though. And then you've got linebackers. I think Johnson would be nice. Johnson would be nice to have back, I think. And for some reason, Broncos fans, I think, underrate him a little bit, but I think Johnson would be very nice to have back. Or at least Josie Jewell. Either one would be nice to have back because I think without them, you're a little bit weak at this position. Browning's okay. Kenny Young actually played fairly well in this defense. So maybe you bring him back too. But inside linebacker is not a massive need as long as you retain one of those players. And then really it's the secondary, which Jake brought up. It's big time in the secondary because Kyle Fuller's a free agent. Bryce Callahan's a free agent. So those two are two of your starting 3 corners. And then Ronald Darby is, I don't think, a free agent. So when you look at it, you've got the young kid from the 3rd round. What's his name? Michael Amudier. He's okay. So maybe he plays a larger role. But you've got, who's the junior? The junior. What's the junior kid's name? The junior. I can't remember his name. Oh, Surtain. So you've got him. He's a stud. So you got him on one side. You've got Darby on the other, probably, unless you cut him. Then you got Amudier, but you need a nickel corner. So maybe you bring back Bryce Callahan. You could do that. You could also look to like a Mackenzie Alexander from the Vikings. You could look maybe at... I wouldn't be surprised if they signed Darius Williams from the Rams. Same defense. Makes sense. Who else? Maybe the draft. I don't think Kyle Fuller is going to be back, to be honest with you. Yeah, I'm not sure. I would just re-sign Bryce Callahan. If it was me, I'd just re-sign Bryce Callahan and then have Darby on one side and Surtain on the other and Amudier as your number 4. Then who else do you got there? But that's a pretty good depth chart, honestly. Justin Simmons, you might have to bring in a safety. So you might have to have somebody to replace Kareem Jackson. You could probably afford Kareem Jackson, but he's regressed quite a bit. Who could replace Kareem Jackson? You could go for... I don't know. This one's tough, actually. Maybe the draft. I've mentioned a lot of these guys for other teams, but I don't see anybody that immediately I know like fits this system. So, yeah, I'm not exactly sure about safety, but you could use a safety to replace Kareem Jackson, and maybe you go younger at that position. But Justin Simmons is obviously going to be there. So really, when you look at the Broncos, they're really good from a roster perspective. They need a quarterback. A quarterback would do a lot for this team. So quarterback's number one. If you don't get Aaron Rodgers, I don't think the draft is a real solution for this team. I would be looking, and I've said, my bargain quarterback of this offseason is Gardner Minshew. Honestly, that would be an upgrade over Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater if you want to go cheap. And then you could kind of like fix the rest of your team. If you want to go with somebody a little bit more proven, you could go trade for Jimmy Garoppolo, which would make sense because he's played in a similar offense to what Hackett runs, right? So that would make sense. I'm not sure Mariota would be great. I think he'd be okay. I feel like I'd rather have... Jimmy makes the most sense to me. But after Jimmy and Minshew, I think Minshew's a great fit too. And then after that, I think who's a great fit? You got Winston, maybe Trubisky. Trubisky actually to me would make sense. He's got a little bit of mobility. He's younger. Maybe you take a chance on him. And then you kind of have Locke and Trubisky fight it out. You could go that way for a year and then maybe you draft one next year sort of thing. If that doesn't work, I think I prefer Trubisky over Mariota. But yeah, that's the way that I look at this team. I think right tackle, obviously quarterback, secondary big time, maybe inside linebacker, maybe D-line, maybe edge. But the Broncos are going to be very interesting, starting with what do they do at quarterback. The Las Vegas Raiders. Before I talk about the Las Vegas Raiders, Natasha has a question. Mitch says, Mitch, what team would you recommend watching in the NFC? Oh, man, as many as you can. I really like watching the Niners, so I'll just say the Niners. But the Super Bowl champs are the Rams, so maybe watch some Rams games. The Las Vegas Raiders. Oh, yeah, Russ would be nice too, obviously. The Las Vegas Raiders. We've got two more teams, guys. Just two more. Maybe with the NFC, I'll be a little bit quicker. But the Raiders. So offensively, this is a Josh McDaniels scheme now. So a lot is going to change with this team in terms of personnel. I think more so they're going to change on defense. I think really their offense is pretty good, and they don't have a lot to change. I think they've got the core pieces there. They've got Colton Miller at left tackle, who's good. They've got Hunter Renfrow at slot receiver. They've got Bryan Edwards on the outside. They've got Darren Waller at tight end. Those are all keys. Josh Jacobs is the first and second down back. Maybe they try to sign James White away from New England to play in this offense as the third down back, who could also kind of teach the offense to everybody because he's just that smart. That might be a way that McDaniels tries to go, and I wouldn't be surprised by that. The offensive line does need some work. I think Andre James is solid. He'll stay put. Leatherwood is probably going to get a year at right guard, but they're going to need to look at right tackle. I wouldn't be surprised if McDaniels tries to steal Trent Brown away, to be honest with you. Ted Karras is another guy that they could try to take from New England on the offensive line at guard and tackle. Then you look at other guards, I think that would fit McDaniels' system. Alex Kappa is one of them from the Bucs. I feel like I don't think they're going to go massive on the guard this offseason. Let's check tackle. I think they'll be in on Trent Brown, but I'm not sure they'll try to sign him necessarily. But they might try to, maybe they look at Nate Solder, a guy from the past, Cornelius Lucas, Brandon Shell, just to slightly upgrade. But that might be the draft. Typically New England has drafted offensive linemen. So if they don't go with like Trent Brown, a big ticket item, they might go with the draft at right tackle. But otherwise, the offensive line is fine. I don't think it's great, but I don't think it's terrible either. They could use some speed at wide receiver, in which case they might go with a trade. I mentioned Brandon Cooks. I do think wide receivers, they are interested in Devontae Adams. From everything we hear, Devontae Adams played with Derek Carr in college. They could be in on him. I think that would be awesome. I think Allen Robinson makes sense, although he's not the fastest. He's a good all-around receiver. Odell makes sense for the Raiders. DJ Chark, Will Fuller. These guys make sense if you want to add a vertical element. Hey, maybe even T.Y. Hilton. Those guys could add a little bit of speed to the wide receiver position and open up things for Hunter Renfrow. And honestly, the offense is good. And Derek Carr is there still. Marcus Mariota, let him go, sign somewhere else. Defensively, I think the defense is going to change drastically. Very new defense, getting away from Gus Bradley's Seattle scheme, more towards Belichick defense. So it's going to be a lot more hybrid, edge, linebacker type players. So KJ Wright is going to be gone. Quentin Jefferson is going to be gone. Probably Jonathan Hankins as well. Maybe you re-sign Solomon Thomas. Not sure. But I think you've got a good foundation of Max Crosby, Yannick Ngakoue, Carl Nassib. Maybe they trade Colin Farrell. I wouldn't be surprised if they did that. Big D linemen. They could bring in big D linemen. One of them being maybe Calais Campbell. That's a guy that I think would make sense. Who else here? Calais Campbell, Akeem Hicks would make a lot of sense. BJ Hill would make a lot of sense as well. Sheldon Richardson would make sense. And even Ndamukong Suh. So those guys are guys to watch out for the inside of that defensive line and free agency. They could also look to the draft. Again, New England loves to draft those type of players too. So when I'm saying New England, I'm referring to Vegas, but it's basically the same. The GM and the coach is from New England. So that's kind of the way that they think. Then you got linebackers. Perryman's still on the team. I think they'll keep him. Diablo. Corey Littleton's going to be gone. They could use a linebacker or two. Maybe they try to get Hightower, but I don't know. Maybe they draft one. I don't think there's a ton in free agency for them to go for. I think the most important thing they do, though, is upgrade the secondary on defense. And I think most importantly, I don't think their safeties. Morig is a good free safety. I think they'll be fine there. Abram, they could try at strong safety and have that young duo at free and strong. And then corner, I think, is really important. So I think Mullen fits. And I think Nate Hobbs isn't a bad player. But they could use one more corner. So I think they're going to go hard for a corner. And it might be J.C. Jackson. It might be Carlton Davis. Might be Stephon Gilmore. Might be Charvarius Ward. But I think they need one pretty big-time corner to pair up on the outside. Casey Hayward will be gone. He doesn't fit the system. So they've got a nice edge duo with Crosby and Yannick Ngakoue. They've got a nice free safety, couple decent corners, but I think you're going to see a lot of movement on this defense, specifically in the middle of their defense and in the corner position. And then offensively, speed at receiver and a right tackle. And honestly, the Raiders are pretty well set up with Derek Carr. He's a good player. And McDaniels, I think, will upgrade their offense schematically. Darren Waller being healthier will be nice. Hunter Renfrow really entering his prime, which I think is one of the most undervalued receivers in the game. And I think they'll get more out of Josh Jacobs in this scheme as well. So the Raiders, I don't think you should sleep on them. I know that they were kind of like a Cinderella team last year, but I do think they're definitely a team to take seriously next year as well. Derek Carr is playing some of his best football of his career, so they'll be pretty good. And then you've got the Los Angeles Chargers, and I think this is fitting that we're finishing with them here tonight, because the Los Angeles Chargers are the team that I feel like could make the most, or do the most, and make the most damage this free agency. The Los Angeles Chargers have a ton of money, and they also have some needs that are pressing, but they have Justin Herbert. And Justin Herbert is one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL. He's going to be one of the 3 best quarterbacks probably for the next decade. And they could be a Super Bowl contending team if they make the right moves. One of those moves, believe it or not, I think is moving on from Mike Williams. I don't think they should re-sign Mike Williams to a massive contract. If he's affordable and he gets decent money, but not like top tier wide receiver 1 money, then that's fine. But I think they should go for a different receiver and maybe even draft one. They have Keenan Allen still, but I would rather them get 2 receivers in free agency than just Mike Williams, or get a rookie and a receiver in free agency, or a tight end like Mike Gesicki over Mike Williams. Rashawn Slater's a stud at left tackle. They're good there. Matt Filer at left guard, solid. Corey Linsley is very good at center. They need to improve their right side of their offensive line. I don't think they're really going to be able to do that in free agency at tackle. I think they might have to draft another tackle unless they could steal, Dwayne Brown or just spend a ton of money on Teron Armstead. They could do that potentially. But there are also value guys like Brandon Shell, Riley Reif, Eric Fisher, Cornelius Lucas. These guys could come in and be an upgrade. Dennis Kelly could all be an upgrade for right tackle. Right guard, Michael Schofield isn't terrible. They could certainly do worse than him. But there are a bunch of guards that they could bring in that I feel like are low-key. Mark Lewinsky, even Quinton Spain. But Ted Karras, bring back Michael Schofield. But I think they mostly need a right tackle. And then a tight end over Jared Cook. Like, if they could get Mike Gesicki, I think that would be perfect landing spot for them. They have Austin Eckler. I think they're fine at running back. Maybe they draft a secondary option. Defensively, they could use an edge rusher. I think where most of their money will be spent is on defense. Outside of the offensive line, edge rusher, I think they could use an upgrade on the opposite side of Joey Bosa. Maybe they go after a veteran like Chandler Jones or Von Miller. That would make sense to me. I also think they could use a difference maker on the inside. So maybe Calais Campbell or Akeem Hicks. Maybe they draft one in there. Adding some depth to the front would also be nice. I think their linebackers are fine. I think they're not terrible. I think they should bring back White if they can. Drew Tranquil is fine. He just gets hurt a lot. Corner position, Michael Davis, Asante Samuel is a good start. I think they should add a third corner. So maybe they try to get Darius Williams, who was really good with the Rams and Staley. They could bring back Chris Harris. I would probably not. They could try to get like JC or Carlton Davis, younger guys that are going to get bigger contracts. Rasul Douglas could make sense, given that he performed well in this scheme in Green Bay. Kyle Fuller would also make sense for the Chargers at corner. Nasir Adderley and Derwin James are good. Maybe you add depth at safety. But, okay, so the overall plan for the Chargers, move on from Mike Williams unless he's coming with a more affordable contract than I feel like, and bring in 2 other receivers that are maybe not as good as Mike Williams, but good players. And then you got sign a right tackle. Whatever you can do, sign a right tackle. Try to get Mike Gesicki. Defensively, get a Von Miller or a Chandler Jones or a Akeem Hicks or both. They've got a ton of money. They can do this all. And then you got corner position. Maybe they go nickel corner. Like DJ Reed, Bryce Callahan would make sense. Or they go with an outside guy like Kyle Fuller. They could also do that. But a nice corner would be good as well. But the biggest needs, I think, are right tackle and edge rusher. Maybe interior defensive lineman. But the Chargers have a lot of money, and they have a chance to form Brandon Staley's defense the way that he wants it this offseason. And that's going to be the biggest difference maker, in my opinion, with how much they grow this year from last year. If they can really put together a nice defense for Brandon Staley, along with the Justin Herbert offense, they could be a really, really good team this next season. So they're the team to watch in the AFC.